Shalom Makayam. First I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Quadash, Tawada. Double honors to the elders of Great Millstone, bringing out this word in truth and spirit and sincerity. And double honors to the camps on the highways and byways who are bringing out the word of Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, and waking up the elect of Israel. Shalom Makayam to the brothers and sisters that are still tuning in to this truth. Prophet Yakahana here to bring out this word once again. Today we're going to talk about the 10 tribes, the 10 lost tribes. I'm reading a book today called The Hope of Israel. Now this book was written by this man here. Now, by Menasseh Ben Israel. Now, I from what I read in this book, I've come to the conclusion that Menasseh Ben Israel is a Jake. Alright? And I know they're showing you pictures of him looking like an Edomite, but I do not believe that these are pictures that depict him in who he is, basically. Now, the reason why I say that is because Menasseh Ben Israel is a Marrano, and he's an actual Marrano. Now, he was born, it says, Menasseh was born in Madeira Island in 1604, and the name was Manuel Dias Sorio, a year after his parents left mainland Portugal. So he was born in Portugal during the time of the Inquisition. Right, and then the family moved to the Netherlands, which we know today as Holland. Right, now he is identified as a Marrano in a book. Now the book that he wrote, he identifies himself as a Marrano. Right, now as you know, Marrano is another name for Moor. Now first I'm going to read it from the book. Is called The Hope of Israel. Right, it's called The Hope of Israel, written by this man here, Menasseh Ben Israel. I'm not sure if it shows you here. Writings. Let's see if it shows you here his book. I think this is it here. Is it here? I think this is it here. Written in I believe this is the book here, but written in Portuguese, I think this is. To achieve his aim, Ben Israel utilized an astounding range of sources, primarily the Talmud, commentary, authors. Written in Spanish in Amsterdam, 1632. It was aimed primarily to strengthen the faith of the Marranos in the veracity of the Tanakh, according to Jewish interpretation. Can't see it says here. Trying to see if it shows this particular book here that I've got of his. You have to wonder why. Here it is, The Hope of Israel. This is the book he wrote in 1652. Now this book was written in 1652. This is what I'm going to be reading out of, alright? Let me just open up a link to this tab here, see what it brings out. Okay. So this is the book here, The Hope of Israel. So this is the book that I'm going to be reading out of, the extracts out of. Now, Menasseh Ben Israel, he tells you to himself that he's a Marrano, alright? So he tells you that he's a Marrano, alright? So, without further ado, we're going to bring out some scriptures, but we won't be that many scriptures today because I really want to focus on this book here, The Hope of Israel. So this is the book I'm reading out of, alright? So the first extract I'm going to bring to you is... I should have put tabs in this, but I didn't. Okay. Trying to see where I want to start. Start here. Start at the top here. It says, a city, trade, science and freedom. Amsterdam made it possible for major centres of Judaism to emerge at the beginning of the 17th century. For while Western Europe, from England in 1290 to France in 1394, then in Spain and Portugal between 1492 and 1496, had expelled the Jews, while Louis XIII, by letters of patent of the 23rd of April 1615, was reaffirming the text of the 1394 expulsion and extending it to the Jews who were for several years have spread in disguise into many parts of this our kingdom. The States General of the United Provinces in that year 1615 authorized Jews to practice their religion publicly. So then it goes on to say, it says the Amsterdam community had an importance in Jewish history out of all the proportions to its membership, which at its height was less than 4,000 souls. These are those who speak of the Dutch miracle of the 17th century. Some historians of Judaism use the term miracle of Amsterdam. Right? It says, indeed, the use of the word miracle would be, to a point, make it possible to dispense with further explanation. However, it is desirable, even in broad outline, to review the history of the community in order to emphasize its extraordinary character and exceptional influence. Right? It says, it is true to say that the birth of the Jewish community of Amsterdam, still poorly understood in spite of detailed research now in progress, it is an important milestone in the eventful history of Spanish and Portuguese Marranos. Right? Now it says here, although Marrano is a technical term used today, just so you understand, by historians for Jews converted to Catholicism who preserved their old religion, the term was used pejoratively by the Spanish and Portuguese to describe new Christians whom they suspected of reverting to Jewish practices. And while it is true that false conversions of Jews took place in Christian countries and Islamic lands in other periods, those which followed the Spanish massacres of 1391 and those perpetual at the Lisbon in 1497 were the most cruel. It says these in effect were attacks on the liveliest and best organized, the longest established, the most influential, the most fruitful group of Jews in medieval Europe. Spanish Jews had built up model communities which were political entities recognized by the kings. They were the source of a Hebrew literature of unparalleled riches. Furthermore, they had made unique material, linguistic and scientific contribution to Spanish civilization. After the expulsion from England and France in the 13th and 14th centuries and the many partial expulsions from Germany, the Jews of Spain constituted the only important center of Judaism in Western Europe. So these are the Marranos that lived in Spain, Portugal, Holland, which were known as the Jews. Now, as you know, it says there, it says, as discrimination against the new Christians worsened, the conviction grew that their Catholicism was purely a matter of form, and that they were Judaizing the citizens of declared Jews. Right? So it says two consequences then ensued: the setting up in 1480 of an inquisition, which very quickly led to thousands of arrests and sentences, some of which were to the stake, and the expulsion by the decree of the 31st of March 1492 of Jews who were refused to be converted and were still living in Spain. It says, though most of these Jews took the path of exile to Italy, Turkey, the Holy Land or Portugal, some ended up swelling the ranks of the converts. During the first years of the 15th century, the course of the Inquisition hunted down Judaizing new Christians remorselessly with the aim of eliminating crypto-Judaism from Spanish soil. All right? So these are the Marranos that the Bible speaks of. All right? That this book speaks of. Now, it says here, it says, for many Marranos, the journey to the Ottoman Empire was interrupted for a while or forever in Italy. In the communities of Rome, Ancona, Ferrara, Pizza, and Livorno. These are all Italian provinces and cities. In Venice, the Portuguese Marranos, who had reverted to Judaism, took a considerable part in the maritime trade of the city of St. Mark's. It says the Portuguese community of Venice, the core of the 16th Sephardic dispersals in the West, provided other communities with leaders, rabbis, systems of internal regulations, and a printed literature unparalleled for diversity and quality. The Portuguese Marranos also reached the northern Netherlands, the Dutch colonies, right? The Dutch colonies in America and England and her possessions. Let me read this again. It says the Portuguese Marranos, which are the black Jews of Europe, which the Jews were black, right? Also reached the northern Netherlands, the Dutch colonies in America and England and her possessions. They were responsible for the creation of the first genuine Jewish communities of the New World, those of Recife in Brazil and of Suriname in Dutch Guyana before 1650. It says subsequently all American Jewish communities among the Caracal, Jamaica and New Amsterdam were to be founded by individuals and families descended from the peninsula of the Marranos, right? It says here, the power of dreams over the Marranos of Portugal must also be taken into the account. To the hope of the Messianic redemption was added a more tangible expectation of leaving their country for a Jewish community, which would be the fount of all material and spiritual goods. At the beginning of the 17th century, it seems, the Portuguese Jewish community of Amsterdam played an important part in the plans of the Peninsula Marranos. It expressed and incarnated the hope of Israel. Which is the book which I'm reading now. So, the reason why I wanted to explain, to show you that this guy here was a Marrano, right? Marranos was another word for Moors, all right? So, if we was to go, so Ben Israel was an actual Moor, all right? As you know, these Europeans during the Renaissance, they make these people look like they're white people, all right? And this is what they did to Menasseh Ben Israel. They make him look like a European white man when he wasn't. He was an actual Moor. That's what Marrano means, right? So let's look at the word Moor, all right? We're going to go to the word Moor. Moor, this is the etymology. We're in the online etymology dictionary, all right? This is where we're going to start. It says Moor, Northern African Berber, one of the race dwelling in Barbary. Late 14th century, from Old French Moor, from medieval Latin Morus, and from Latin Morus. Inhabitant of Mauritania, Roman Northwest Africa, a region now corresponding to northern Algeria and Morocco. From the Greek Moros, perhaps a native name, or else cognate with Morus, which means, as you can see, black. That's what the word Marrano originally meant. So when the Europeans were referring to these Jews that were living in Portugal, Spain, Holland, Amsterdam, Italy, when they called them Marranos, it's because they were black, right? This is what it meant, right? Now they've changed the word Marrano. They've given it a modern take. They've given it a different meaning. So what they've done today, they've made the word Marrano to mean something else. So let me quickly show you here. When it talks about him being a Marrano, it says here, it says written in Spanish in Amsterdam 1632, it was aimed primarily to strengthen the faith of the Marranos. So it says here, Marrano were Spanish and Portuguese Jews living in the Iberian Peninsula. Absolutely, that's who they were. They were Spanish and Portuguese Jews living in the Iberian Peninsula, the Marranos. Because remember, the Moors conquered Spain, Portugal, parts of Italy, southern France for over 700 years. Let's just remember that. The Moors were Israelites from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin who had converted to Islam. Just so you understand what we're dealing with. That's who the Moors were, all right? So, Marrano meant black. This is a Portuguese word for black, Marrano, right? This is what it meant. This is how they identified the Jews, the Spanish and Portuguese Jews. But as you know, when you look at when we're looking at the renaissance of their arts, they show them as being white Caucasians, and they were not. They were black, all right? They were so-called black people. So it says Marranos were Spanish and Portuguese Jews living in the Iberian Peninsula who converted or were forced to convert to Christianity during the Middle Ages, yet continued to practice Judaism in secret, because during the Spanish Inquisition under Ferdinand and Isabella, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Portugal, who joined together, these were the Spanish and Portuguese that first went to the Americas and committed their atrocities to the Native American Indians, who are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And we're going to prove this to you in the same book that I'm reading, all right? So when I'm showing you this here more, I just want you to understand again. It goes back to from the Greek word moros, perhaps a native name or else a cognate with moros, which means black. But this adjective only appears in late Greek and may as well be from the people's name as the reverse. Also applied to the Arabic conquerors of Spain, all right? So it was also applied to the Arabic conquerors of Spain. Those are those same Israelites who were part of the Moors or who had converted to Islam, and also those black Jews in Spain, Portugal, Italy and France and so forth and so on. So listen carefully. It says also applied to the Arabic conquerors of Spain, being a dark people in relation to Europeans. It was applied to them. That was the word that was used to describe them. Marranos, right? Their name, it says, being a dark people, as you can see, in the relation to the Europeans, their name in the Middle Ages was synonymous for Negro. That's a hole in one, don't you think? Being the nearest Muslims to Western Europe, it was used indiscriminately of Muslims, Persians, Arabs, etc. But especially those in India cognate with the Dutch Moor, the German Moor, the Danish Morea, the Spanish Moro, the Italian Moro. So these are all the places that we read of that the Jewish community lived in Europe, right? There was in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Holland, all right? And it's exactly what I just read from this book here called The Hope of Israel. I read it again. It says, for many Marranos, right, the journey to the Ottoman Empire was interrupted for a while or forever, right? In Italy, in communities of Rome, Ancona, Ferrara, Pisa, or Livorno, right? That's in Italy. In Venice, the Portuguese Marranos who had reverted to Judaism took a considerable part in the maritime trade of the city and St. Mark, right? So it says the Portuguese Marranos also reach, right, the northern Netherlands, the Dutch colonies in America and England and her possessions, all right? So the first thing I want you to understand is that this man here, Menasseh Ben Israel, is not a Caucasian, he is a Marrano, all right? He identifies himself as a Marrano. A Marrano is a Moor. It was a term used to identify the black Jews or the so-called dark-skinned people of Europe after they were conquered by the Spaniards and the Portuguese, all right? It says in 1644, Menasseh met Antonio Montezinos, a Portuguese traveller and Marrano Sephardic Jew who had been in the New World, which is what we know as America today. Montezimo convinced him of his conclusion of the South American Andes Indians were the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. So this is a man, a fellow black Jew he met up in the New World in America, all right? It says, this purported discovery gave a new impulse to Manasseh's messianic hopes, as a settlement of Jews throughout the world was supposed to be a sign that the Messiah would come. Filled with the idea, he turned his attention to England, whence the Jews had been expelled since 1290. He worked to get them permission to settle there again and thus hasten the Messiah's coming. So, we're going to read about these people here. We're going to read about this man here. We're going to read about Antonio de Montezinos, right? Who Menasseh Ben Israel met. Read it again. Antonio de Montezinos, also known as Aaron Levi was a Portuguese traveller and a Marrano, which is a black Jew, Sephardic Jew. As you know, the Sephardic Jews are today they're very dark skinned. They're very brown skinned Sephardic Jews that live in Israel today. A lot of those Sephardic Jews that are in Israel today are actually Israelites. The ones that are not are those Amalekites, those Eastern European Jews that live in Israel today, calling themselves Israelis. But a lot of the Sephardic Jews that live in Israel today are Israelites because they descend from these dark-skinned black Jews who were living all throughout Europe. So it says there, Antonio de Montezinos, also known as Aaron Levi, was a Portuguese traveller and a Marrano Sephardic Jew who in 1644 persuaded Menasseh Ben Israel, a rabbi of Amsterdam, that he had found one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel living in the jungles of Quito Province of Ecuador. So it says there, in 1644, Menasseh met Antonio de Montezinos, a Portuguese traveller and Marrano Sephardic Jew who had been in the New World. Montezinos convinced him of his conclusion that the South American Andes Indians were the descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So he would have come across at that point, those would have been Reuben, the Seminole Indians, and Naphtali, and Asher. And he probably might have come across some of the tribe of probably Zebulun as well while he was out there, because those were most of the South American, Native American Indian tribes. That's where those are where those tribes, out of the 10 lost tribes, were based, right? Those particular tribes, just so you understand. So let's go read this book. I said it's going to be I just need to read some extracts out of this book. Read some extracts out of this book. So now we are on page 64, all right? You've got to buy this book, people. If you truly want to know about our people, there's just absolutely more evidence showing you who the Native American Indians are of North, South America and Canada. So I'm on page 64 in the book of the Hope of Israel, all right? It says there, this book had its origin in an amazing tale told on its return from the Americas by a Jewish traveller called Antonio de Montezinos. And that's this man here. Antonio de Montezinos, also known as Aaron Levi, was a Portuguese traveller of Marrano Sephardic. This is who we're talking about, all right? This man here, all right? So let's just go back here. Antonio Montezinos. This is who I'm reading of. It says, this book had its origin in an amazing tale told on his return from the Americas. On whose return? On the return of... Let me just put up another tab with this. On the return of Menasseh Ben Israel, all right? From the Americas by a Jewish traveller, Antonio de Montezinos, of whom we shall have more to say later. It is sufficient here to know that he claimed to have found the descendants of the 10 lost tribes, all right? It says, in his first letter dated November, last 25th, he says that in his treatise he handles of the first inhabitants of America, which he believes were the 10 lost tribes of Israel. It says, moreover, they were scattered also in other countries, which he names, and that they keep their true religion as hoping to return again to the Holy Land in due time. All right? It says there, that was his first letter he wrote back home. In his second letter, dated the 23rd of December, right, he says more distinctly thus, I declare how that our Israelites were the first finders out of America. I think that the 10 tribes lived not only there, but also in other lands scattered everywhere. These never did come back to the second temple, and they keep till this day the Jewish religion. So then at their appointed times all the tribes shall meet from all the parts of the world into 2 provinces, namely Assyria and Egypt. Nor shall their kingdom be any more divided, but they shall have one prince, the Messiah, the son of David. I do also set forth the inquisition of Spain, and rehearse divers out of our nations, and also Christian martyrs who in our times have suffered several sorts of torments. And then having showed with very great honours our Jews have been graced also by several princes who confess Christianity. I prove at large that the day of the promised Messiah unto us does draw near, upon which occasion I explain many prophecies. So remember, this book is written in 1642. Right, around 1650 this book is written, right? Now, Antonio de Montezinos is the one that's telling you that these Native American Indians in America are definitely the descendants from the 10 lost tribes, are definitely the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now he refers to their captivity, because in the book he quotes it as well. He says in 1721 BC, the Assyrian king Sargon took possession of Samaria. The kingdom of Israel was brought down. It was a catastrophe without precedent in the history of Israel. The conquerors had a policy of deportation and exchange of populations. Deported to Assyria, 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel vanished from the historical scene. Later on, the idea of the lost tribes was to haunt Jewish minds for a long time, right? So it says there, the letter from Menasseh Ben Israel to John Jury, dated the 25th of November 1649 at Amsterdam, right? And Thomas Thorgood, Jews in America or probabilities that the Americans are of that race. Curiously enough, in the 16th century, one Antonio Montezinos of Lima stated, according to the writings of Luis Lopez, the Bishop of Quito, that the Indians of the islands and the mainlands of the Indies are Hebrews, descended from the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So, when did that deportation happen? Let's quickly bring that up. 2 Kings 17. So this is when this deportation happened of the 10 lost tribes, the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom from the land of Israel by King Shalmaneser, king of Assyria. That Antonio Montezinos, this man here, is referencing in the book written by this man here, in this book here, The Hope of Israel, written by this man here, Menasseh Ben Israel. All right. So this is a man who's telling this man here who came to the Americas that these people here the Native Indians of America, are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So he's making it quite clear. Antonio is telling a fellow Jew, Marrano, fellow Jew called Menasseh Ben Israel, who came to the Americas, about this. And this man here, Menasseh Ben Israel, wrote a letter back to his fellow Jews back in Marrano's, back in Amsterdam, to let them know that they have found the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now, it says here, I read it again, a letter from Menasseh Ben Israel to John Jury, dated the 25th of November 1649 at Amsterdam, right? It's also mentioned in Thomas Thorgood's book called Jews in America, or probabilities that the Americans are of that race. It says, curiously enough, in the 16th century, one Antonio Montezinos, this man here, Antonio Montezinos, right, of Lima, stated, according to the writings of Luis Lopez, Bishop of Quito, that the Indians of the islands of well, right? So you got the islands of the Americas, Portugal, is it Guyana, Cuba, all the islands that come off South America, what we know as the West Indies, right? That the Indians of the islands and the mainland of the Indies are Hebrews, descended from the 10 lost tribes of Israel, right? So he also quoted their departure, how they were taken out of the land. This is what he quoted here, 2 Kings chapter 17. It says, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to the so-called king of Egypt. All right? So he found conspiracy in Hoshea. He found conspiracy in King Hoshea. All right? And brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria, which is the northern kingdom. That's where the 10 tribes were. All right, because at that point here, the kingdom of Israel was split into 2 kingdoms. You had the northern kingdom and you had the southern kingdom. And the king of the northern kingdom at that time was Hoshea. All right, and besieged in 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, which is the 10 tribes in the northern kingdom, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Hala and in Harbour by the river of Gozan, and in the city of the Medes. For it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of the Pharaoh king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, of the kings of Israel which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord Yahweh their power, and they built to them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced cities. And they set them up images and groves in very high hill and under the every green tree, and there they burnt incense in all high places, as did the heathen, whom the Lord Yahweh carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet the Lord Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. All right. So this is what they stopped doing. They stopped following the laws, commandments, and statutes. They was getting involved in pure idolatry. So King Hosea was taking them into captivity. So he quotes this in the book as well, when Menasseh Ben Israel says, in 721 BC, the Assyrian king Sargon took possession of Samaria, which I just read. The kingdom of Israel was brought down. It was a catastrophe without precedent in the history of Israel. The conquerors had a policy of deportation and exchange of populations, right? And they deported to Assyria 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel, vanished from the historical scene. So when he says they had a policy of deportation, exchange of populations, let's see where that tallies up. So let's go down to verse. Verse 8. It says, For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom. All right. Rehoboam was the first king of the southern kingdom of Israel, when the kingdom split into 2 after King Solomon had died. Right. Rehoboam was Solomon's son. He ruled the southern kingdom. That's where Judah and Benjamin was, and Levi. All right. So it says there, For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them, until the Lord Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. Right? And I'm talking right unto this day now. They've never gone back. It says, And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cuta, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. Do you understand? So when he says here, when he makes a statement here saying, it It says the conquerors, which was the king of Assyria, Shalmaneser, had a policy of deportation and exchange of populations. That's what happened to Israel. So that's how they came out of the land, right? Now let's read some more extracts about the Native American Indians. So we're page 66. It says, but once the tale was known, made use of, and distorted. So we're on page 66. Where are we? We're on page 66 in this book here, right? The Hope of Israel. So it says, but once the tale was known, made use of, and distorted by the Christians, he had to claim it as a Jewish piece of good news. And then he put it in the context of existing explanations concerning the problem of the 10 tribes. For Montezinos' account, transmitted by Drury to Thorgood, Thorgood was used to back up John Eliot's the evangelistic mission to the Americas. Menasseh Ben Israel wants to put a very quick end to the explanation of the Jewish origin of the Indians suggested by Drury and supported by Thomas Thorogood, right? So it says, but as a rabbi of a community whose members had, for the most part, lived as Marranos in the Iberia Peninsula, as himself the son of a Marrano, and as a great admirer and relative by marriage of Isaac Abramadel, the writer of several books and commentaries on the coming of the Messiah. It says, Menasseh Ben Israel knew very well the explosive charge the word Esperanza had in Spain, as much of Judaism of the new Christians of the old Christian who used to deride the Marranos' Messianic hopes. So even back then, the Marranos, the ones that were still following the faith, the black Jews in Europe, in Portugal, Spain and so forth, understood the scriptures about the second coming of the Messiah of Yahushua, all right? And the gathering of the 12 tribes. So, it says, so we're on page 70 now. I'm reading extracts out of this book here that you can see on the screen, called The Hope of Israel. So page 70 says, for Christians, as we have seen, and especially for Protestants, it posed a problem of ethnography, where the American Indians descended from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. It also made a number of people face the questions of the nearness of the second coming, because it's all about the gathering of the 12 tribes and the elect of the 12 tribes for that great day of salvation. It's all about that. It says the adventure began in Spanish New Granada, now the Republic of Colombia, between the river port of Honda on the Magdalena and the Audacia of the Quito. It says, our Antonio de Montezinos crossed the Cordilleras with some Indians, that's a river they're speaking of, whom he engaged to carry his goods. On the way, some of them were complaining about their ill fortune, and their leader, a certain Francisco, made a curious remark which Montezinos heard, but to which he paid no attention. And yet Francisco was alluding to a hidden people who would avenge the Indians for all the ills heaped on them by the Spanish. So even back then, they knew that these Europeans, these Edomites, were going to receive an almighty judgment. Now, Francisco is a native Indian of the Americas, right? Just so you understand, right? Page 71. It says, a fair time elapsed during which Montezinos reached Cartagena of the Indies. There, our traveller was arrested by the Inquisition. In prison, he had plenty of time to reflect on his past. The remark made by the Indian, Francisco, came back to him and led him to say to himself, the Indians are Hebrews. So Francisco in India made a remark to him about the judgment that these Europeans, these Edomites, were going to receive. Now this is in the year 1650 we're talking, all right? Just so you understand how far back this is. This is nearly 400 years ago, all right? So while he was in prison, while Montezuma was imprisoned by the Spanish, all right, under their Inquisition laws, he said he had time to reflect on the remark that the Indian Francisco came back to him and led him to say to himself, these Indians are Hebrews. He promised himself that if he escaped from the jail of the Inquisition, he would get to the bottom of the matter. The Inquisition did release its victims. Faithful to his resolve, Antonio de Montezinos returned to Honda and amazingly found Francisco again. Right? So Antonio de Montezinos, he found the Indian Francisco again, all right, who told him that the Native American Indians of these lands and the islands are the sons of Israel. All right. So he says, he repeated his mysterious words to Montezinos and appeared willingly to travel with him. And as soon as they left the town, Montezinos began to question his companion. The revelations really began there, for it is unthinkable to talk of Judaism without a town. All right. So it says the dialogue between the Indian and Montezinos in the depths of the countryside, away from all inquisitive eavesdroppers, is typical of the behavior of Marranos, who used to confess their true faith to each other in that way. So they're having this dialogue. Francisco, the native Indians, having this dialogue with Antonio de Montezinos, right? As they're going through the jungles on the way to an Indian village, all right? So listen carefully. It says here, it says, our traveler declared that he was a son of Israel. So Francisco, the native Indian, declared that he was a son of Israel, Yasharallah. So he's using those words, all right? And the Indian, it says, we start again, it says, our traveler declared that he was a son of Israel. And the Indian, whose confidence he won, was difficulty, proposed an audacious journey across the mountains. The trek lasted for more than a week, and one morning the two men reached the bank of a great river which the narrator compares to the Douro. It was the Rio Cauca. I think that's the Rio Grande. The Rio Cauca, right? It says, beyond this river lived some strange Indians who came to meet Montezinos and recited to him the Jewish profession of the faith in Hebrew. So listen to what these Native American Indians recited to Antonio de Montezinos, who was a Marrano Jew who came to the Americas, all right? So it says there, I'll read this again. It says, beyond this river lived some strange Indians who came to meet Montezinos and recited to him the Jewish profession of the faith in Hebrew. This is what they recited. Hear, O Israel, right? The Lord, our power, is one power. The Lord our God is one God. Our traveller was not, however, allowed to cross the river, but the Indians came over several times to give him a curious message consisting of 9 propositions. So they recited, Hear, O Israel, so hear, O Yasharallah, Yahweh, our Allah is one power. Because or you can say Elohim. Allah means power. Elohim means power. So this is what they recited to him. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, is one God. How beautiful. It says, our traveller was not, however, allowed to cross the river, but the Indians came over several times to give him a curious message consisting of 9 propositions. These men claimed to be descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Reuben. So this particular tribe that he came across made it specifically clear to Montezinos, to Antonio Montezinos, they made it clear to this man here, who's a Marrano black Jew, Sephardic black Jew in the Americas, this particular tribe that they came across, that the Indian Francisco brought him to, said these men claimed to be from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They called out our forefathers' name, and Reuben, and said they came from the tribe of Reuben. So they would have been what we know today as the Seminole Indians, all right? It says one day they would come out of hiding. To do this, they were waiting for messengers who knew how to write. Well, it's beautiful, boy. That's awesome. So it says there, at the end of 3 days, laden with provisions and presents, Antonio de Montezinos and Francisco the Indian took their leave of these strange Indians and retraced their steps. On the way, Francisco explained to his companion the mystery of these Israelite Indians. Having arrived in the country many moons ago, they were repeatedly attacked by new arrivals. The true Indians Francisco's own ancestors, the Israelites were driven back, but nevertheless caused many casualties among the Indians. Weary of war, the last Mohannis prophesied the truth was on the side of the sons of Israel, that at the end of time they would leave their hiding place and become the masters of the world. The Indians should therefore join them so as to share their fortunate destiny. From that time, there existed a secret alliance between many Indians and the sons of Israel. Well, they were all Israelites, but these are all the different tribes. Because the 10 tribes went there, but over the course of time, the tribes split up and went their separate ways within America. So some of the tribes ended up in Canada, some ended up in North America, some ended up on the islands of the West Indies, Cuba, Portugal, Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados, Antigua, and some ended up all throughout South America, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela. It says the Indians should therefore join them. Read it again. It says the Israelites were driven back, but nevertheless caused many casualties among the Indians. Weary of war, the last Mohannis prophesied the truth was on the side of the sons of Israel, and that at the end of time they would leave their hiding place and become the masters of the world. The Indians should therefore join them so as to share their fortunate destiny. From that time, there existed a secret alliance between many Indians and the sons of Israel. Furthermore, at Honda, Montezinos was introduced by his companion to 3 young natives. The account ends with these words. It says, upon a time you shall see us and shall not know us. All right? This is what the discussion they had. This is what the Indians were saying to Montezinos. They said, upon a time you shall see and shall not know us. We are all our brethren by God's singular favor. As for the country, be secure, for we rule all the Indians. After we have finished a business we have with the wicked Spaniards, we will bring you out of your bondage by God's help. Not doubting, but he who cannot lie will help us according to his words. So they knew that the Most High was coming back to deliver them. So let's go and find out that all the tribes are going to get back together. Where is that prophesied? Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel 37 talks about the 12 tribes coming together. It says the word of the Lord Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, Wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, Thus says the Lord power Yahweh, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is the northern kingdom, right, which is in the land of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows. These are talking about all of the Native American Indians, and will put them with him, and even with the stick of Judah. Who is Judah? African Americans, West Indians, and Caribbeans, those who descend from the transatlantic slave trade. Your Haitians, right? African Americans, West Indians, and Caribbeans, right? That's who Judah is. And even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And you see that happening today on the highways and byways all throughout America, all throughout Europe, again right into Asia, Australia. You see the elect of the 12 tribes of Israel are gathering together, and they are waking up the rest of the elect of Israel. Just like what I'm doing today, showing you that those Native American Indians, who they called Seminoles, Gadites, Dominicans, Arawaks, Mayans, Aztecs, Mapuches, Tanios, Apaches, Cherokees, all of those were the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So this is the prophecy. And these native Indians knew that Israel, the sons of Israel, were going to be revenged and repatriated back to the Holy Land. And they knew that without even knowing about the book of Ezekiel or Jeremiah. They knew that from the Torah, because the book they would have had at the time there would have been the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. That's the book they would have carried with them. That's the only book they would have had in their hand at that time, when they were taken away by Shalmaneser and taken into captivity. What we read here in 2 Kings chapter 17. So it says there, it says, and the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before thine eyes, and say unto them, thus says the Lord power, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen. And that's where we are. We are living amongst the heathen. Wherever we are, whether it's in England, France, America, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador, Jamaica, Antigua, Guyana, Cuba, Haiti, Dominican, wherever we are throughout Europe, the Lord is going to gather us from among the heathen. Because of the transatlantic slave trade, we have been spread even further to the 4 corners of the world. It says, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side from the 4 corners of the planet, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more 2 nations, neither shall they be divided into 2 kingdoms anymore at all. You understand? So you just got to go back to Genesis or Numbers, when it speaks about how the children of Israel were going to be gathered as well. In Genesis it talks about the blessings. In Genesis 49, Jacob talks about the blessings because they knew about their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. When he talks about the blessings, Simeon, and when it says there, and Jacob called these unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. So they knew about these things because the prophecies of Israel taken into captivity, Israel falling flat on their face, and Israel being redeemed is in the first 5 books of the Bible, which we know as the Torah. Alright, and this one Jacob talks about the blessings that's going to come upon them. And we know about the blessings and the curses in the book of Deuteronomy. I mean, you can read this, Genesis 49, Deuteronomy 28. There's so many in there, but I want to focus more on what I'm reading out of here. So now we're in book, page 74. It says, the chronological authenticity of the events which Montezinos describes is more difficult to establish. Although he reached Amsterdam on the 9th of December 1644, he relates that it all began 2.5 years previously. That was in March 1642. All right. It says here. It says. It says this story. It says, the most acceptable solution seems to us to be the following. At the beginning of 1639, at the latest, Antonio de Montezinos met the Indian Francisco for the first time. He then went to Cartagena, where he was arrested. Right? For 18 months, he languished in the secret prisons of the Inquisition. While there, reflecting on his past life, he came to the conviction that the Indians whom he had met were Jews. Freed from the clutches of the Holy Office on the 9th of February 1641, he had time to get back to Honda and the hidden Israelites, and no doubt to return to Cartagena before making off to Amsterdam. It says the historian might be tempted to conclude critically that Montezinos, broken by his long imprisonment, which was only punctuated by the 3 hearings, purely and simply imagined that the descendants of one of the lost tribes of Israel, that of Reuben, was living in a lost refuge in the Andes, and that it fell to him to reveal these facts to his Jewish brothers living in a free land. This leaves the oath sworn by our traveller to the truth of the tale the first time in Amsterdam and the second time in Permabanco, taking the same oath at his death. All right? It says, Messianic expectations is the most essential characteristic of the Jewish people. Set out of these treaties written in the Middle Ages or in modern times, expressed belatedly as an article of faith by the Maimonides, this, I can't pronounce it, I'll spell it for you, Maimonides, were often fundamental in text and daily life. It is also implicit in Jewish attitude of mind, both popular and learned. The discourse of the Jewish people is constantly permeated by the fact of the messianism, which even if not always expressed, is always quietly lived by. This discourse is firstly that of the traditional sources, the Bible, right? It says that it is secondly and supremely that of the daily literacy and of those festivals when the imminent coming of the Messiah, the son of David, is recited 3 times a day in grace after the meals. Right? It says there, we intend only to bring out the special contribution which Jewish sources have brought to the coming of the Messiah. This contribution has varied over the course of history. The Jewish people were not established as such before the exodus from Egypt. For many centuries they formed a political entity which they lost and found again for a time. They then endured an interminable exile, right? So that talks about their exile. It goes into the prophecies to do with King David. And then it talks about he writes here, talk about the piece of the biblical evidence of the messianic promise. So, hold on. It says the messianic hope is present in the Hebrew people's infancy. The divine promise given to Abraham foretells a state of bliss which through him will be spread among all the peoples. And that's going to come. Couple more. It says here. It says almost, I'm on page 101. It says almost all who have viewed these countries with great diligence have been of different judgments. Some would have the praise of finding out America to be due to the Carthaginians, right? The Carthaginians, right? Others, we should start again. It says almost all who have viewed those countries with great diligence have been of different judgments. Some would have the praise of finding out America to be due to the Carthaginians, others to the Phoenicians or the Canaanites, others to the Indians or people of China, others to them of Norway, others to the inhabitants of the Atlantic islands, others to the Tartars, others to the 10 tribes. Indeed, everyone grounds his opinion not upon probable arguments, but light conjectures, as will appear further by this book. But I, having curiously examined whatever has hereto been written upon this subject, do find no opinion more probable, nor agreeable to reason, than that of our Montezinos, who says that the first inhabitants of America were the 10 lost tribes of the Israelites, whom the Tartars conquered, that's Shalmaneser we spoke of, the Assyrians, and drove away, who after that, as God would have it, hid themselves behind the Cordilleran Mountains, alright? It says, I also showed that as they were not driven out at once from their country, as also they were scattered into divers provinces, i.e. into America, into Tartar, into China, into Media, right? And into Ethiopia. I prove that the 10 tribes, because we know we were scattered to the 4 corners, Israel, right? I proved that the 10 tribes never returned to the second temple, that they yet keep the laws of Moses and our sacred rites, and at the last shall return to their land with the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. That's what I just read in Ezekiel, the prophecy of. That's what I just read here in Ezekiel 37. About the tribes of Israel coming back together. Son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions, and take another stick and write upon it for Joseph the stick and his companions, and for all the house of Israel his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. So this is what he's referring to here, Menasseh Ben Israel. He says, I prove that the 10 tribes ever returned to the second temple, and that they yet keep the laws of Moses and our sacred rites, and at last shall return to their land with 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. So those are your African Americans, West Indians and Caribbeans, Haitians, all those that descend from the transatlantic slave trade. That's Judah and Benjamin, right? And they shall be governed by one prince, who is the Messiah, the son of David. And without doubt that the time is near, and it's even closer now, which I make appear by divers things, where, reader, you shall find different histories worthy of memory, and many prophecies of the old prophets open with much study and care. And that's one of the prophecies that we're reading in that. There's many more, right? So it says here, page 106. It says, now when they were got out of the city, Montezinos confessed himself to be a Hebrew of the tribe of Levi, and that the Lord was his God. And he told the Indian that all other gods were but mockeries. The Indian, being amazed, asked him the name of his parents. He answered, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says, Montezinos swearing that he spoke the truth. The Indian asked him if he were not the son of Israel, and thereupon began a long discourse. It says, the next day being Monday, the cockatoo came again and bid him throw away what he had in his knapsack, to put on shoes made of linen, pack thread, and to follow him with his staff. Whereupon Montezinos, leaving his cloak and his sword and other things which he had about him, and they began the journey, the Indian carrying upon his back 3 measures of maize, 2 ropes, one of which was full of knots, to climb up the mountain with a hooked fork. The other was so loose for to pass over marshes, the rivers, and a little axe, and shoes made of linen pack thread. They, being thus accounted, travelled the whole week unto the Sabbath day, on which day they resting the day after they went until Tuesday, on which day about 8 o'clock in the morning they came to a river as big as the Douro. Then the Indian said, here you shall see your brethren, and making an ensign with a fine linen of Xylus, which they had about them instead of a girdle. Thereupon on the other side of the river they saw a great smoke, and immediately after such another ensign made as they had made before. A little after that 3 men with a woman in a little boat came to them. Being come near, the woman went ashore, the rest staying in the boat, who, talking a good while with an Indian in a language which Montezinos understood not. So it says, after that the Indian bade Montezinos to be of good courage, and not to look that they should come a second time to him, till he had fully learned the things which were told him at the first time. So it says, then those 2 men coming on each side of Montezinos, they spoke in Hebrew. These Indians were speaking in Hebrew. They spoke in Hebrew, the 4th verse of Deuteronomy chapter 6. Shema Israel Adoni, Elohim Adoni Ehad. That is, hear, O Israel, the Lord, our power is one power. They were speaking in Hebrew, these native Indians. They were speaking in Hebrew to Montezimo. We read this again. It says, then those 2 men coming on each side of Montezinos, they spoke in Hebrew. The 4th verse of Deuteronomy chapter 6 is what they spoke. Deuteronomy chapter 6. In Hebrew they spoke, the Indians, to Montezinos. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one Yahweh. So they spoke in Hebrew. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Shema Israel, Adoni Elohim, Adoni Ehad. That is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. Then the Indian interpreter, being asked how it was in Spanish, they spoke what follows to Montezinos, making a short pause between every particular, because Montezinos spoke Spanish, because he was born and raised in Spain. But he was a Marrano. It says, our fathers are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Israel. This is what Indian is saying to Montezinos, right? He says, our fathers are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Israel, and they signified these four by the three fingers lifted up. And they joined Reuben, adding another finger to the former three. So they were saying that they were from the tribe of Reuben. It says, we will bestow several places on them who have a mind to live with us. It says, Joseph dwells in the midst of the sea. So it says, Joseph, which we know, and we always tell you this, that Joseph is Ephraim and Manasseh, they're the Cubans. And Ephraim is the Puerto Ricans, which are the Italian Arawak Indians, and they were dwelling in the land in the island of Puerto Ricans, and Manasseh was dwelling in the Cuban, right, in Cuba, right. And we always tell you that, and on the 12 tribes chart of Israel, we show you that Ephraim were the Arawak and Tanio Indians who were dwelling in the islands of Puerto Rico, and we show you that Manasseh was the native Indians of Cuba, right, that were dwelling in the islands of Cuba. And this is beautiful. This is what the Indians are telling Montezinos. He says, Joseph dwells in the midst of the sea, and they making a sign by two fingers put together and then parted them. Right? Joseph is who? Who are Joseph's two sons? Ephraim and Manasseh. And we show you that on the 12 tribes chart. So this is a Native American, this Indian from South America, from the tribe of Reuben, telling Montezinos in the time of 1650 where the tribe of Joseph was. This is beautiful. It says, they said, speaking fast, shortly some of us will go forth to sea and to tread underfoot, at which word they winked and stamped with their feet. It says, one day we shall all of us talk together, they saying, ba, 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 and we shall come forth as issuing out of our mother, the earth. A certain messenger shall go forth. That's Yahushai. It says, Francisco shall tell you somewhat more of these things. They making a sign with their finger that much must not be spoken, because they understood that one day the 12 tribes were going to be gathered again, put in their power and restored back to the Holy Land. They knew that from the stories that their forefathers told them, and they knew that when Antonio Montezinos visited them with Francisco, the native Indian of the tribe of Reuben. It says, Francisco shall tell you somewhat more of these things, they making a sign with their finger that much must not be spoken. It says, suffer us that we may prepare ourselves. And they turning their hands and faces every way, thus prayed to the Most High, do not stay long. Send 12 men, they taking a sign that they would have men that had beards, who are skillful in writing. Oh my gee. It says, the conference being ended, which lasted a whole day, the same men returned on Wednesday and Thursday and spoke the same things again without adding a word. At last, Montezinos, being weary that they did not answer what he asked them, nor would suffer him to go over the river, he cast himself into their boat, but being forced out again, he fell into the river and was in danger to be drowned, for he could not swim. But being got out of the water, the rest being angry said to him, attempt not to pass the river, nor to inquire more than we tell you, which the Indian interpreted to him, the rest declaring the same things, both signs and words. It says, the same day when they came to the place where they had rested the night before, they came to the river. Montezinos said to the Indian, you remember, Francisco, that my brethren told me that you should tell me something. Therefore I entreat you that you would not think much to relate it. The Indian answered, I will tell you what I know, only do not trouble me, and you shall know the truth, as I have received it from my forefathers. But if you press me too much, as you seem to do, you will make me tell you lies. Attend, therefore I pray to what I shall tell you. Your brethren are the sons of Israel, and brought thither by the providence of the Most High, who for their sake wrought many miracles which you will not believe. If I should tell you what I have learned from my fathers, we Indians made war upon them in that place, and used them more hardly than we now are by the Spaniards. Then by the instigation of our magicians, whom we call Mohanas, which are their prophets, we went armed at that place where you saw your brethren, with an intent to destroy them. But not one of all of those who went thither came back again. Whereupon we raised a great army and set upon them, but with the same success, for again none escaped. which happened also the third time, so that the Indies will almost bereft of all inhabitants but old men and women. The old men therefore and the rest who survived, believing that the magicians, which are the prophets, used false dealings, consulted to destroy them all, and many of them being killed. Those who remained promised to discover somewhat that was not known. Upon that they desisted from cruelty, and they declared such things as follows: that the God of the children of Israel is the true God, that all that which is engraven upon their stones is true, that about the end of the world they shall be lords of the worlds. For Jacob is the end of the world, but Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning. He says, we read this again, that the God of the chosen children of Israel is the true God, that all that which is in, this is what the Indian is saying to Montezinos, so you understand. He says that the God of the chosen of those children of Israel is the true God, and that all that is engraven upon their stones is true, that about the end of the world they shall be lords of the world, that some shall come who shall bring you much good, and after that they have enriched the earth with all good things. Those children of Israel going forth out of their country shall subdue the whole world to them. So they knew that Esau was going to come and enrich themselves. Let me read this again. He says there, that some shall come who shall bring you much good, and after that they have enriched the earth with all good things. Those children of Israel going forth out of their country shall subdue the whole world to them, as it was subject to them formerly. You shall be happy if you make a league with them. For Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning. So they knew that they were going to at some point come forth out of the Amazons, out of the countries that they were scattered to, and that they were going to rule the world. It says, then 5 of the chief Indians, whom they call Kazi, who were my ancestors, having understood the prophecy of the magicians, which they had learned of the wise men of the Hebrews, went thither, and after much entreaty obtained their desire, having first made known their mind to that woman whom you saw to be for an interpreter. For your brethren will have no commerce with our Indians, whoever of ours enters the country of your brethren, they presently kill him, and none of your brethren do pass into our country. Now by the help of that woman we made this agreement with them. And it says, and Montezinos, being asked of what nation he was, he answered in Hebrew, of the tribe of Levi, that the God was his God, etc. Which when they had heard, they embraced him again and said, upon a time you shall see us and shall not know us. We are all your brethren, my God's singular favour. And again they both of them by bidding farewell departed, everyone saying, I'll go about my business. Therefore none but Francisco being left, who, saluting Montezinos as a brother, they bade him farewell, saying, farewell my brother, I have other things to do, and I go to visit your brethren with other Hebrew Indians. As for the country, be secure, for we rule all the Indians. After we have finished a business which we have with the wicked Spaniards, we will bring you out of your bondage by God's help. Not doubting, but he who cannot lie will help us according to his word. Endeavour you in the meanwhile that those men may come. He said, we just read this last bit again. After we have finished a business which we have with the wicked Spaniards, which are the Edomites, we will bring you out of your bondage by God's help. Not doubting, but he who cannot lie will help us according to his word. Endeavour in that meanwhile that those men may come. Boy, I'm going to leave it there, boy. Like I said, the Native American Indians are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Right? This book here, The Hope of Israel, once again is another book written in the late 17th century, the mid to the late 17th century, that depicts the travels of these people, of Menasseh Ben Israel, Antonio de Montezinos, who went and visited the Native American Indians and found out that they were their fellow brothers, because these were Marrano Jews. So anyway, on that note, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakar, Kodash, Tawada, Amen. I pray this was an edifying lesson to the Akiyams out there. And for those who continue to don't want to believe or accept that the Native American Indian tribes of North America, South America, Canada and the West Indies are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Shalom Akayam. Shalom.